Hi, this is Tony at Owen Powered Access. Quick video here on pre-use checks and inspections for Nifty Lift 170. Probably as the hire of a piece of kit, it'll turn up and be new to you on site. You want to do the basic checks. The hire company should give it to you in good condition, of course. We always try and ensure that we do that. But yeah, you'll get machines that turn up are in a bit of a state. But anyway, so in the basket, 170, all sorts of machines. They have these black plastic boxes. Normally in here should be the instructions and the paperwork for the machine. Honda petrol engine manual. In this case here we've got Certex who do my independent inspections. That's a certificate of test for this machine. Lola, lifting operations, lifting equipment regulations, so something that lifts people, personnel, every 6 months, so that's in there. What I've got out already is the user manual for the machine. Not particularly exciting, but page 13, pre-operational safety check schedules, daily checks, weekly checks. On the other side of the paperwork is monthly, 6 monthly and annual tests. The latter are kind of more for the hire companies, aren't they, than the hirer, which may well be you. Right, this is the Bible, this is the gospel bit. This is the bit that really, if you get your machine, read through this, go around and check the machine. Well, I'm going to not go through all the detail, I'm just going to show you some of the basics, generally what we're looking for. So, common sense stuff. Honda petrol engine, really reliable, no good to you at all if you don't put fuel in it, so check that. Common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people run them out of fuel and don't get very far. Took the cover off this machine. What you'd want to do is check that the batteries are charged. You can plug it in and check that, but also what you'd want to do is just take the caps off the tops of the batteries, just make sure there's electrolyte covering the lid plates in there. The batteries aren't going to be any good to you if they're bone dry. One of the other checks you want to do is hydraulic level, and this particular one, there's a tank here with a dipstick, an upper and a lower mark. One of the things with these Nifty Lifts that might not concern you at all, but if you fill it to the top mark, as these bounce down the road and go over the speed bumps and that, this is a breather as well as a filler, so this will spit the oil out of the top. That's why the top of these tanks are a bit wet. You'll be more likely to find that the level it settles at is near the lower mark. There's still plenty of oil in the machine for it to work properly, but textbook, you fill them to the top. In reality, they spit a litre of that back out again. Level's low on that dipstick as we are now, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually because I've put the legs down, so a lot of the oil is out in the machine and not back in the tank. So there we are. Another check we would have on this machine is these have a manual hand pump for getting you down. There's a handle that lives in these clips up here. That goes on there. You just want to check that's nice and free. You can actually feel if it's got oil in it or not. If it's really, well, you feel the resistance of the oil, so you feel that it's working. Also, what you do, if you didn't have a phone in your hand filming this, you'd choose an up or a down control, use the pump and prove that it works. Again, you want to prove it's working on the ground and not find it doesn't work if you're up in the air and rely on it. Okay, so for the rest of the machine, basic walk round, you'd walk around the whole machine from, you pick a start point, do a 360 all the way around the machine so you don't miss anything. You'd be checking all the hoses for damage, make sure the fittings are dry, nothing's leaking, everyth's tight as far as you can see. Don't necessarily have to go around it with a spanner sort of religiously, but a common sense look over everything. This machine, I sort of fit these abrasion sort of banding stuff to anywhere where it's likely to be rubbed and scuffed up. There we are. So you go all the way around the machine doing that. The only other thing you need to check is all the pivot pins and retainers, the structural stuff. So wherever there's a pivot point or a movement point, there's a pivot pin. In these cases are so 13mm heads, so what are they? M8 bolts that hold these in. Some down here. This one's been loose before, you can see where the powder coat is missing where I've had a spanner on it and nipped it up. They don't come loose very often, but that's what we do the checks to make sure they don't. Everywhere there's hydraulic ram, there's another pin and a retaining bolt. If you look at one of the legs, top of the hydraulic ram, there's a cap head screw there and a retainer and a pivot pin. Similar down the bottom. The other end of the leg, same again. So anyway, I digress, but pick a point, check all these things as you walk around the machine. Particularly prone to corrosion are these the front leg hydraulics. The paint is looking a bit scabby here, but it's structurally sound. But yeah, these catch a lot of road grime and salt, so they tend to get corroded there, so it's a point to look at. Same with the with the motor mover drive, which is here. Again, that needs a bit of looking at. Anyway, so here we are again. So main boom and the knuckle here between that and the top boom, pins and retainers. Walk all the way around the machine. You're looking for damage on here. On these particular machines at the front, between the lower boom, this knuckle, and the top boom, they tend to get scratched and scuffed here. You can see where this actually starting to rub on here where it's been used. So I'll put some, it's not gone too far on that, it's just scuffed the outer cover, so I'll put some wrap around that to stop that getting any worse, and we'll keep an eye on it. On the bottoms of each of the booms are locking blocks here. We have the supply and return lines, and these are the locking blocks. Again, you're just making sure that nothing's leaking. Yeah, I can't make it any more technical than that. We just walk around the whole machine and you'll be checking all the points all the way around. I'm getting a bit of a routine of doing this. Come around to the basket and do the same. Susceptible point for damage on these Nifty Lift is under the boom here. You can see where this boom pivot is at the bottom, and all the hoses come around here. Susceptible for tree surgery in particular. They get smacked and nipped and damaged. Sometimes roof work, people do roof work, they jam these into the tiles and damage stuff. Any work above your head doesn't seem to cause an issue. Yeah, the bolts that hold the ram to level the basket. I'll do a separate video on that. That bolt is loose and should be. That holds the cage onto the pivot here should the load cell part company and break. So that one is the only one on the machine that you'd be happy to find loose. These four here, and there's four on the other side, they go either side of the load cell, and they're important that they're all in. There we are. It's rather a long and dull video about pre-use checks, but it's a common sense walk around. Fluids, pivot pins, retainers, batteries, things being charged up. Common sense stuff, but often overlooked.